All right, guys, this is The Flight of Icarus, Part 2. All right, let's do a quick recap of what Part 1 was about. Remember, Daedalus, who's a smart guy who built the labyrinth, got King Minos upset, and King Minos put Daedalus and his son on an island to die. They wanted to escape, so Daedalus decided that he should create some wings. He built some wings for him and his son Icarus, and Icarus is kind of testing it out, flying around. He's looking like he's a little immature, not that bright. I actually really kind of like this picture. This guy doesn't look too bright. Um, so when we last left it yesterday, his dad was just telling him, don't fly too high or the sun will melt your wax on the wings and then they'll melt. And don't fly too low because the water will get you. Stay in the middle and stick with me. So that's where we last left the story. So now let's pick up with the rest of the flight of Icarus. All right, so here we go. I want to start right here with Daedalus's words to his son.
Keep near me, and you will be safe. He kissed Icarus and fastened the wings more securely to his son's shoulders. Icarus, standing in the bright sun, the shining wings dropping gracefully from his shoulders, his golden hair wet with spray, and his eyes bright and dark with excitement, looked like a lovely bird. Daedalus's eyes filled with tears, and turning away, he soared into the sky, calling to Icarus to follow. From time to time, he looked back to see that the boy was safe, and to note how he managed his wings in his flight. As they flew across the land to test their prowess before setting out across the dark, wild sea, plowmen below stopped their work, and shepherds gazed in wonder, thinking Daedalus and Icarus were gods.
I had to stay on that page so the rest would play. All right, so we're here. Now, apparently on this island, some people kind of live there because there are plowmen or people working, farmers working in the field, and shepherds would looked up and saw that Daedalus and Icarus were flying, and they kind of looked like gods. Let's continue.
Father and son flew over Samos and Delos, which lay on their left, and Lebenthus, which lay on their right. Icarus, beating his wings in joy, felt the thrill of the cool wind on his face and the clear air above and below him. He flew higher and higher up into the blue sky until he reached the clouds. His father saw him and called out in alarm. He tried to follow him, but he was heavier, and his wings would not carry him. Up and up Icarus soared, through the soft, moist clouds, and out again toward the glorious sun. He was bewitched by a sense of freedom, and beat his wings frantically, so that they would carry him higher and higher to heaven itself. The blazing sun beat down on the wings and softened the wax. Small feathers fell from the wings and floated softly down, warning Icarus to stay his flight and glide to earth. But the enchanted boy did not notice them until the sun became so hot that the largest feathers dropped off and he began to sink. Frantically, he fluttered his arms, but no feathers remained to hold the air. He cried out to his father, but his voice was submerged in the blue waters of the sea, which has forever after been called by his name.
So here, just to clarify, his voice was submerged in the blue waters of the sea. But right now, Icarus is still in the air.
Daedalus, crazed by anxiety, called back to him, "Icarus, Icarus, my son, where are you?" At last he saw the feathers floating from the sky, and soon...
Went too far. And soon his son plunged through the clouds into the sea.
Daedalus hurried to save him, but it was too late. He gathered the boy in his arms and flew to land, the tips of his wings dragging in the water from the double burden they bore. Weeping bitterly, he buried his small son and called the land Icaria in his memory.
So this was the moment that Icarus plunged through the clouds into the sea. and then it's implied that he died, probably by smacking the water. Daedalus hurried to save him, but it was too late. So then he had to take him out of the water, bring him to land, and then he buried him in a place that was called Icaria in his memory.
Then, with a flutter of wings, he once more took to the air, but the joy of his flight was gone, and his victory over the air was bitter to him. He arrived safely in Sicily, where he built a temple to Apollo, and hung up his wings as an offering to the god. And in the wings he pressed a few bright feathers he had found floating on the water where Icarus fell. And he mourned for the bird-like sun, who had thrown caution to the winds in the exultation of his freedom from the earth.
And that's the end of the story. It's a sad story. It's not like Rogue Wave, where both of our heroes made it out alive. In this one, Icarus flew too high, and because of that, ended up falling to his death. So the textbook has a little video here at the end to kind of help us understand that very, very last line of the story. So let's go ahead and watch it.
The last sentence of this myth is important because it hints at the story's theme. Remember, a theme is a message about life or human nature that a writer wants to share with readers. However, the sentence includes language that might make the message hard to figure out. So let's read it again. And he mourned for the bird-like sun who had thrown caution to the winds in the exultation of his freedom from the earth. There's an idiom here that you may not be familiar with. Throw caution to the winds. An idiom is a statement that has a meaning different from the meaning of its individual words. So to understand the idea of Icarus throwing caution to the winds, you have to see beyond the meaning of each word. So think about it. When you throw things to the wind, like, say, a bunch of leaves, you are going to lose them and not get them back. They're just going to blow away. So when Icarus threw caution to the winds, he threw away his carefulness or self-control. He ignored his father's advice and completely gave up on being careful. Now look back at the sentence again. The writer uses a pretty rare word, exaltation, to describe Icarus's actions. If you guessed at the word's meaning and came up with happiness, you were pretty close. But looking it up in a dictionary and carefully reading the entry will give you a much more accurate meaning. This second meaning seems to fit the context best. A feeling or state of intense, often excessive happiness. Intense means strong, and excessive means too much. So exaltation is the feeling of being way too happy about something, like being crazy happy. So what theme or message do you think the writer is trying to suggest? Scan back through the story and reread the parts that describe Icarus's actions. Then find the details that connect to this last sentence. Doing so will help you answer this question. Why might throwing caution to the winds be a bad thing?
So after analyzing that last sentence, let's look at this collaborative discussion question. It says, in the last sentence, the author says that Icarus had thrown caution to the winds, like I explained in that video. He had made a bold and risky move. And there's that word again, bold. That's what we're talking about this unit. How had both Icarus and Daedalus made bold and risky moves? They both made bold and risky moves. There were two different ones. So how had both of them made bold and risky moves? So that's the question you're going to answer. All right, so now that we've finished the story, let's go back over to the 5.5 elements of story. All right, so when we started this video, we were in the middle of the rising action. So now, what was the rest of the rising action in the story? Yeah, so the rest of the rising action involved them taking off into the sky and leaving the island. So now, what was the climax of the story? Good. The climax of the story is after he had risen higher and higher, Icarus, his feathers begin to fall off. And that's the climax. That begins it when the reader's like, oh no, I see it coming. Here it goes. And then eventually, when he plummets into the sea and dies, that's the climax of the story. So now, what is the falling action in the story? The falling action in the story consists of Daedalus collecting his son and bringing his son over and burying him. That's kind of the falling action of the story. And then finally, what's the resolution of the story? The resolution of the story is actually in this story. And in the story, it mentions that Daedalus took his wings to the temple of Apollo and hung his wings up to never use again. So essentially, Daedalus is never going to fly again, and he gave his wings to the gods. Now, to wrap up this story and to get you started to think about what we're going to do Thursday and get you ready for the quiz on Friday, here's a question I'm going to leave you with. People today refer to someone who flew too close to the sun as a cautionary tale. Caution means to be careful, watch out, here's a warning. So what does this expression mean, and what does it have to do with Icarus? Explain. All right, so now for the rest of the period, what I want you to do is go over to Google Classroom and find the brainstorming assignment. So now we're going to start kind of thinking about your story and your 5 elements of story. So when you click on this link, it'll open up this brainstorming session. Fill it out as you usually do. For those who have already started this brainstorming session, it's going to say, you've already submitted this. Do you want to edit it? And you're going to click yes. Then go ahead and go through and answer these questions. You're going to summarize the setting of your story. Then you're going to come up with the 5.5 elements of your story. What is your idea for the exposition of your story? Inciting incident, rising action, climax, falling action, resolution. For those of you looking at this and going, oh my goodness, oh, so much work, it's too much. Once you get this done, this is actually your final project. Once you get this stuff nailed out, your final project is going to be a breeze. All right, so start working on this. When you're done, or I should say this, if the bell rings before you're going to be done, if class finishes, go ahead and click submit, even if you don't have all these filled out. Because what you'll do is hitting submit is a way to save it. Then when you go back to Google Classroom and click on the brainstorming again, it'll say, hey, you've already submitted it. You want to edit that one? And you can tell it, yes, I would like to. All right, so that's what you're going to be doing for the rest of the period.